Buonasera, benvenuti a questo incontro sul
So, good afternoon and welcome to this session on international institutions during the COVID pandemic. So this is organized together with the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, and I'd like to welcome Minister Luigi Di Maio. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for inviting me, and good afternoon to everyone. And then we have Emma Marcegaglia, President of B20. Good evening, it's a pleasure. Francesco Rocca, who is President of the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, and President of the Italian Red Cross Association. Good afternoon. So this session should have focused on the new role of international institutions in this difficult time of COVID that has called upon everyone to cooperate in order to face this dramatic situation. Because, if there are countries that are not safe, and there are no countries that are safe. But there is another dramatic situation now underway, the situation in Afghanistan, in Kabul, so we'll be dealing with that as well. But first of all, I would like to give the floor to Luca Beccari, who is the Secretary of State for Foreign Affairs, International Economic Cooperation and Telecommunications of the Republic of San Marino. Good afternoon, and I'm really glad to be here today in Rimini at the meeting to speak on behalf of the Republic of San Marino in this very special event to which we have been participating over the last 10 years. I believe that being back in the Rimini Fiera location means that the meeting has really found its potential in terms of resources, human resources, and which is actually unique for this event. Today I'm here together with many distinguished guests to speak about a theme that calls upon us to make deep reflections. And I do believe that the role of international institutions is extremely important at the moment, as is the concept of multi-side approaches. And the COVID situation has actually exposed our vulnerability, both in stronger systems as well as for the most fragile situations and systems. So many countries have to face challenges that have a national level and have to be then managed locally, but they are at the same time connected with a global approach to combat the pandemic. Both big and small countries are aware that the challenge of COVID in health terms as well as in economic terms cannot be faced alone. So from this point of view, I believe that the role of international institutions is extremely important. Well, this experience taught us that we have to work in a more effective way at international level in order to adopt a common approach. San Marino is a unique kind of example because it is a country a country that can be seen as a state that has actually exceptional resources, even though we have limited means. But on the other hand, it is that has had great difficulties in managing the COVID crisis more than other countries. So, well, I believe that our point of view, our experience, leads us to say that today we must find a common stance to face this challenge at international level. And it is not only the need to decide which vaccines we want to use or how we want to support our economies. It is rather the problem of managing communication, lack of communication and information. In the struggle against COVID, there are different points of view that become more and more evident because there are so many fake news or news that are not really correct. So, well, in a few weeks, I think, there will be the General Assembly of the United Nations, and I do think that this is going to be the highest international contest in terms of international politics, where the theme of the COVID pandemic will be dealt with. It's a great opportunity for all the countries to find some form of synergy, of convergence that go beyond geopolitical balances. And this will also make it possible for all the countries to use all the tools that our citizens need from the healthcare point of view, as well as from the point of view of everyday life. So, well, I believe that a country like San Marino really has to support the role of international institutions. We have a 1,700 years history. It has survived very difficult historical moments without waging war against anyone, and this was because it has always been internationally acknowledged. So, well, the Congress of Vienna, the process of reunification of Italy after the Second World War. International organizations are vital for foreign policies of different countries. And today, more than ever, there is not just the COVID situation. We know that the dramatic situation in Afghanistan shows the real threat to go back to a violation of human rights and conflicts in that region. So at the moment, it is more important than ever to actually promote values like the respect of human rights and the peaceful resolution of conflicts at the level of international institutions. So that's all on my part. I would just like to bring forward to you my best wishes for the success of the meeting. Thank you. Well, those of you who has already been here in the past years, you've seen the area that we have created together with the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, which shows many different experts as their World Food Program that won the Nobel Prize for Peace last year. The basis for humanitarian intervention of Brindisi, which is a key element of international cooperation. I don't know whether many know that we have in our country such an important center. We have the European Commission, we have the International Center for Research on Food Studies, an area for the 17 targets of the 2030 agenda, Save the Children and the Alliance for Sustainability. And we have created this pavilion, this area, because we wanted to show that Italy is really at the center of the international scene. And this year, more than ever, because for the first time, Italy this year has the presidency of the G20. The summit will take place in Rome at the end of October. The G20 summit, the G20 represents the most important industrialized countries, 80% of the global GDP and 60% of the global population. Before the summit in Rome, there are many other summits. So one of them is the B20 Business Summit, that is an international dialogue among the most important companies. So as I said before, we have today the president of B20, Emma Marcegaglia. And President Marcegaglia, in history, we always witnessed that trade, enterprises, business, connected countries. They were in a way peaceful forces. And today we also have another aspect, because there are new conflicts, new economic conflicts. So will the B20 summit be an opportunity to face these problems and create new opportunities for the future? You have the floor. First of all, President, I would like to thank you for the invitation. I would like to give my welcome to President Rocca and Minister Di Maio. I'm really happy to participate in this debate. I must say that the Rimini meeting has always been a moment of very important reflections, and this is even more so this year in this moment of crisis. I'll be very fast because, everyone knows what the situation is. This 18 months of pandemic have actually turned our lives upside down. There are more inequalities from the healthcare point of view, but there is also the worst economic crisis after the war, even though the recovery has slowly started, and also in Italy. And I would like to add that the pandemic has strengthened some processes that were already underway and were already changing our lives. So, for instance, the increase in gaps and inequalities, and then again the digital revolution, the struggle against climate changes, and then from the geopolitical point of view, we also have some thorny issues. So there are these the resurgence of populism, nationalism, and many tensions at geopolitical level in the whole world. So, this has led to the withdrawal of the U.S. troops from Afghan and the coming to power of the Taliban in Afghanistan. So, what I wanted to say is that all these situations we are witnessing at the moment, both of those that are successful, for instance, vaccination, and the failures, like the situation in Afghanistan, tell us clearly that the solution to all the big problems we have to face nowadays, which are global in nature, can be found only through cooperation agreements at a global level, at international level. There is no other way. And those who think that they can act on their own are naive in a way. And I will give you a couple of examples. So vaccines, for instance, we have found vaccines in just 1 year thanks to a global cooperation between pharmaceutical companies, research centers that worked together for the first time in history, finding a vaccine in just 1 year. Another example would be the attempt at managing this dramatic situation, which led our president of the council and Minister Di Maio, whom I thank for the great work he is doing, to organize an extraordinary G20 so that the head of states and government of the G20 country can discuss all the current problems. And then we can think about the climate situation. Europe can do a lot, but we're responsible for just 8 to 9% of global emissions. So we really need to cooperate with all the other countries of the world. So there are so many other examples, as for instance, the rules on digitalization. So after years and years of dangerous protectionism and nationalism, well, now it is obvious and clear that problems can be solved together. So G20, B20 are really very important fora. Well, also the G7 is extremely important because it puts together the 7 more industrialized countries in the world. So it is very useful to work at G7 level in terms of, for instance, our attitude towards China. But when we talk about these global problems, it is the G20 the right forum to tackle this problem, because it covers 80% of the global GDP and 60% of the global population, as you said before. The G20 was founded in 1989 as the Council of Financial Ministers. Then in 2008, it became the biggest reunion of heads of state and government. So it is then it opens up to the civil society, and a series of different subgroups, so to speak, was created as the B20. So, well, I would like to stress that this year there is a lot of attention is devoted with a lot of Italian and European enterprises, industrial federations as well. We have more than 2,000 representatives of 5 million of companies throughout the world. So G20 and B20 are an opportunity for Italy to show its leadership at global level. We heard the president of the European Central Bank and many other paying compliments to the Italian government for how it is managing the difficult problems linked to the G20. So we, Italian companies and enterprises, need to show our leadership at international level as well as our local excellences. And well, according to international data, we are the second biggest exporter at world level. We are a leader in so many different sectors, not only the food sector or design sector, but also in the pharmaceutical sector, mechanical sector, and many others, including the technologies, environmental technologies, circular economy. So this is a way to show our skills, our know-how, our expertise. And I believe we really can bring an added value to the solution to global problems, because we know the international market. When we talk about big international problems, our enterprises are familiar with the international market. You mentioned the World Food Program at the beginning of our B20 work. We had the president of the World Food Program with us, who said, well, in order to solve this problem, we need more than just your funds, your financing. Means we need to work together. We need cooperation. So I think we can actually bring some pragmatism to this process, and in particular, the Italian enterprises and industries can create connections and provide solutions that are not connected to political problems. But undoubtedly, there are also some conflicts. So, well, there is a great participation to our B20 because everyone believes that that 2021 could be the year of recovery, the year when we finally registered growth. So But this growth has to be different from that of the past. It has to be more sustainable, more inclusive, because this is the only possible way. And we must avoid making the same mistakes we made in the past. We have three objectives. The first is to identify the priorities to go back to this sustainable growth. We have a lot of task forces dealing with digitalization, infrastructure, and many other themes. And so first of all, we have identified priorities. Then the second objective is, and we will be doing this in October, but we did that on many other occasions, and Minister Di Maio was always actually present. That is to say, to provide heads of state our concrete proposals to meet these problems in the situation as difficult as the current one. The G20 has to be a forum where heads of state agree on actions and then implement these actions. So this is not the time of statements and declarations, neither for the B20 nor for the G20. So we really need to act at the moment. And this is what we are doing, and that's what we will be proposing. And these actions need to be measurable. We must set our targets. So, for instance, if we want to have more women on the labor market, we need to set clear targets. Now the level is 20%. We need to set a goal at 30, 40%. Digital network coverage, we want to reach 70% in 3 years. So the second objective is to really propose concrete actions. Then the third objective, which is extremely important, is that enterprises want to be responsible, want to take upon themselves these responsibilities, because these global problems do call for a great action on the part of governments, but there is a great responsibility that has to be taken by enterprises, because the problems of inequality cannot be solved without enterprises, without entrepreneurial innovation, without investments in the enterprises. So we really want to commit ourselves in finding a solution. And very quickly, I'll just give you a couple of examples. As you said, there are many conflicts at the moment. So in order to manage these conflicts, we need to mediate, to listen, and also to avoid to accept compromises, because that really doesn't help our cause. Climate, first of all. The struggle against climate changes. We have a great opportunity with COP26 and with the G20. Well, our point of view is clear. Environmental sustainability has to go hand in hand with the social and economic sustainability. We need pragmatism. We need to use all of the available technologies. So we need to invest in new technologies. So what I wanted to say is that we have seen the position of China and India on climate, whereas the United States are doing a lot. So it's not true, and I want to stress that this have gone back to their isolation and the former politics. But I had the pleasure to take part in the G20 on energy chaired by Minister Cingolani, and I do believe that we will be making steps forwards that will probably won't be enough, but they will really mean a lot. And I believe that this G20 will really mark a progress. There is a conflict, though, with India and China. With reference to trade and commerce, for us it is extremely important to have the World Trade Organization that really works. We want to have open markets, fair markets, but openness is here really the key word. This is the only way to create richness, to overcome misery and poverty, and the circulation of vaccines also. And here undoubtedly, the major difficulty is our relationship with China in terms of, for instance, rules established by the World Trade Organization, as for instance to reduce state aid, but rules have to be approved and met. So when we talk about trade, there is the theme of raw materials, greater technologies, and I do believe that there is a big conflict on this theme between China and the United States, and Europe, in a way, can play a very important role in terms of trade, technologies, and standards. But I agree with what our president said. Europe needs to go towards deeper integration. If there are countries that are against this integration, they need to actually be treated accordingly. And the European leadership is something that can see Italy playing a very important role with Draghi and our governments.
We will certainly talk about this last aspect with Minister Di Maio. But first, President Rocca. So the Red Cross is maybe the elder daughter of multilateralism. She, stemmed from the Geneva Agreements. And the Red Cross and other similar organizations are a result of that. So how do you feel about that? Do you feel supported or what by the multilateralism? So first of all, I would like to greet Mrs. Marcegaglia and Minister Di Maio. Well, I must confess that, generally speaking, the Red Cross and other international bodies feel very much frustrated when it comes to the multilateralism. So on August 22nd, 1864, the first convention was signed in Geneva, so there was the official recognition of our organization by states, and today we are present in 192 countries. And so there was an agreement that's been renewed after the Second World War, and it was a very strong and solid agreement, but unfortunately, attacks to hospitals have increased, as well as to humanitarian operators, kidnapping, and attacks on civilians have increased. So as far as the respect by states is concerned, because we must be frank and say that some conflicts are supported by states. So in spite of that, no sanction is foreseen. The same applies to refugees. The Geneva Conventions should protect refugees. Unfortunately, states seem to forget the obligations they have because they undersigned those agreements. So then we see a refugee crisis at the gates of Europe. And then we have the World Health Organization. It is the most important international health body that has been at the center of many controversies. And the WHO, for instance, has invited to think over the third dose of the vaccine. Instead, Western countries are thinking about that, and then you have the poorest part of the world that is suffering very much. So unfortunately, we must say that multilateralism is not working very much. And I also want to talk about Afghanistan, because certainly This is also the clear failure of a unilateral system. So what you are seeing is the dramatic result. So this is a consequence of the lack of dialogue. So we continue working. Our facilities and hospitals continue working. We are present on the territory. Up until last morning, I talked with the management of the Red Crescent of Afghanistan. So we cooperate and we have a dialogue with any interlocutor, because for Red Cross, having access to the sick and the people in need is key. So we need to talk to any interlocutors in Afghanistan, in Yemen, in the Sahel region. We need to have a dialogue with all the players and actors that are present in a certain territory. And here, well, then the problems start, because we're going through a very difficult period. There is a strong politicization of humanitarian issues, so they're somehow biased from the political point of view. So in Venezuela, we saw that there was a disastrous approach by some countries, and the country was already in a catastrophe and leaves behind international support organizations like the Red Cross and humanitarian operators. So then those operators are somehow affected by a level of burden that is excessive. So it's not up to us to have to be heard. Another thing that I have experienced, and that I experience very much with the 150,000 volunteer workers of the Italian Red Cross. And well, I must say that this is a situation that is occurring also in other countries. And well, immigration is really dramatic. So those who try to rescue immigrants seem to be, the real culprits. So rescuing has become a political action and is subject to criticism. Instead, to us, the priority is to save lives. Then it is up to states to manage the situation. So I'm very critical in this respect, because we need multilateralism, we need dialogue, we need to build bridges. And President Marcegaglia was talking about the need for agreements. Yes, of course, but then agreements need to be complied with. And then you have COVAX. COVAX is the result of a large agreement, and certainly Italy and the European Union has played a big role, but so far 220 million doses have been distributed, compared with the 4 billion doses have been circulated in the rest of the world. So this is very little. So if we look at the map of African countries, well, we see that unfortunately 98% of the population is not vaccinated. Instead, well, the COVAX idea was to distribute vaccines as a priority to all healthcare operators at global level, and also to the most fragile people at global level, something that unfortunately has not been completely done yet. But there is still hope, because there's going to be, during the autumn, the assembly of the WTO, and Mrs. Marcegaglia reminded that. And so businesses should also open up. There is a problem about technology transfer and patents. I had a meeting with the general director of the WTO, and she's quite worried. And she also told me something somehow dramatic and ironic. She said, I don't want the zillions fruitful meeting. I want something more substantial. I want something more tangible, because this is a unique opportunity as the COP26. It's another precious opportunity. We need concrete action. And well, it's very positive that the U.S. have come back to the Paris Agreement on climate, because certainly we need common action in that respect. So multilateralism today is desperately needed, probably now more than ever, and Italy is playing a key role. And I really want to thank Minister Di Maio, because in Brindisi he wanted a specific moment of reflection on humanitarian aid and the difficulties that they have at a global level, especially when it comes to logistics. In Italy, we have this base, but still we have ministry interlocutors that are pretty important. So it was very, very interesting and fruitful. And I say it as president of the Italian Red Cross, I'm very proud of the way we are working, but there is little listening capacity. And the crisis, not just the COVID crisis, have always been a cause for frustration, because when you work hands-on and you can measure the level of failure generated by the lack of dialogue, that is extremely frustrating. And in Afghanistan, well, I do hope that things will change pretty soon, because, well, rumors have it that people want to suspend aid, but that kind of reaction would increase the level of vulnerability, of pain, because the country is really in a disastrous situation. There is also a problem of hunger. So we really need a multilateral dialogue to be renewed as soon as possible. Thank you. Thank you, President. Thank you for being so clear. Minister Di Maio, I think that Italy can be proud about the way it works internationally when it comes to cooperation. It is very well known for that, and its role is acknowledged, but there are new challenges that we heard. Italy has always been at the heart of multilateralism, but now the challenges are so many. And what role is Italy going to play in such an uncertain period? I give it the floor, Minister. Thank you, President, and I would also like to thank President Marcegaglia, President Rocca. Thank you very much, first of all, for the invitation to the meeting for the friendship among the peoples. I would like to thank the Foundation and you, Mr. President. This is an occasion of dialogue and multilateralism that we had agreed upon long before seeing what we are seeing today in Afghanistan. So this is an additional opportunity to talk about what is happening in Afghanistan and to try to talk about the needs, the means that we need to have when it comes to multilateralism. And I'm very happy to take the floor because the COVID crisis and other regional crises highlighted to what extent no country can, just solve the situation by itself and alone. Nobody can make it alone. So this is something that Pope Francis stated and that is commonly acknowledged. President Marcegaglia and President Rocca have represented over the last year two key realities that represent Italy very well at international level. First of all, I would like to express a few ideas about what is happening in Afghanistan. Afghanistan has been one of the major challenges of the last 20 years for the international community and the multilateral system. In spite of the investment made in that country, And the United Nations, the NATO, and the European Union have also supported the government in Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the whole international community underestimated the situation, and now we are going through dramatic times. And certainly we will have to better understand the mistakes committed by the whole international community. And this situation requires an even stricter cooperation with our allies in order to cope with the situation. And during the multilateral meetings of the last period, I really seized each opportunity to express our need to reinforce our Western alliance. Any weakening of that alliance would lead to a weakening of each country. So instead, we need to strengthen our alliance. And we have 5 priorities easily vis-à-vis Afghanistan. First of all, we have a priority related to the protection of civilians. We need to protect those inhabitants that have worked with the Western communities. And I'm here at the headquarters of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and we are organizing the evacuation of the Afghani citizens that have been working with Italy. There is a representation of the council and some soldiers to simply try to save the activists and the people who want to leave the country. In less than a week, we evacuated 1,600 Afghani civilians, former collaborators, and their families, and 2,500 will come to Italy. Second priority is the respect of civilian freedoms and individual freedoms. We cannot tolerate that all that was conquered over the last 20 years, it gets lost, especially the rights of women. So Italy supports the convocation of a special session of the Human Rights Committee of the UN to analyze the situation in Afghanistan. And this Tuesday there is going to be a meeting discussing a mechanism of monitoring to measure the level of violation of human rights in Afghanistan. And then we have the asylum seeker demand level. We are going certainly to have a surge in that number of requests. So we need to be ready as European Union to try to respond to these flaws. And then we have the fourth priority that has to do with the humanitarian flaws to guarantee full access to help to any area of the country. So NGOs and the UN systems need to be present in Afghanistan and also need to increase their cooperation opportunities with respect to the population. And then the last priority is about the fight against terrorism. So Afghanistan cannot become a paradise for the communities of terrorists. So we need to fight against drug trafficking and also the production of opium in Afghanistan, because this is one of the main sources of financing of terrorism. We will need to involve many other countries in order to achieve these goals. And the G20 has been mentioned multiple times, and our Prime Minister Draghi is intentioned to convocate a special G20 over the next week to talk about Afghanistan. So this convocation of the G7 by the UK is very positive. This has been announced really a few hours ago. And there is going to be this meeting, and we are going to be able to connect with our stricter allies. But this year at the G20, we have Russia and China and India sitting around the same table. And now these countries certainly represent a key and strategic element in the strategy of Europe vis-à-vis Afghanistan. So the added value of a G20 is about getting together around the same table all the relevant countries that could devise a common strategy. The case of Afghanistan epitomizes the difficulties that the Western world is really having. And so this is certainly worsened by the COVID crisis because the COVID crisis highlighted several problems at international level. In particular, I would like to underscore three aspects. First of all, the geopolitical setting of the pandemic, the role of Italy to the response to the crisis, and the reform perspective of multilateralism. With respect to the international geopolitical setting, so the perception of globalization and the worsening of commercial disputes between states and some extremist right-wing phenomena in some countries have worsened situations, like also the divisions inside the European Union, the relation with China, and also some international relations with other countries. So I remember what happened some time ago with respect to a first attitude of the European Union towards Italy. So the need to limit the crisis highlighted the need for coordinated response. And Italy was one of the first countries that asked for multilateral coordinated solutions. And we have seen to what extent international cooperation was able to go beyond pure national problems. And President Rocca is right when he says that some of these things are still underway. First of all, at global level, we had a global alliance for the vaccine, so accelerator tool to accelerate the vaccine. And so there was certainly a unparalleled acceleration that was possible thanks to this pressure that was exerted by these a community of states. So again, probably we would have not been able to reach what we reached thanks to this. And then there was the equal distribution of vaccines. So the 385 million euros that were supplied to the COVAX facility let us donate 15 million doses to the poorest countries. By the end of 2021, we facilitated donation of doses to people in need like Libya, Yemen, Albania, Kosovo, and Indonesia. And we were aware of the fact that without an adequate covering of the vaccine of all the planet areas, the risk of having the virus circulating is very high. And then we have the Next Generation EU, the second example I want to mention. That is a European example, strongly supported by Italy. So the EU went over the rigorous approach and decided to accept a co-responsibility approach shared by all member countries. And Italy is one of the first countries whose recovery and resilience plan was approved, and it has got so far 25 billion euros. And the role of Italy does not stop there, because there is something more. I want to tell you about what we're doing when it comes to the G20 presidency on technological transition support to developing countries and health. Italy, when it comes to the equal universal access to vaccines, promoted a special meeting on global health and contributed to the adoption of the Rome Declaration, framework of reference for multilateral action and prevention of health emergencies. So Italy put man at the center of the first pillar of its G20 agenda. And so this is the One Health approach that is based on the security of man, animals, and plant. And today, more than ever, the connection between health and the technological process is evident. Italy wants to promote also the digital and green transition by exploiting the synergies offered by the double presidency of the G20 and the partnership of the UK for the COP26. And we had the first international meeting on energy very recently in Naples, and that is in line with the COP of 26 of Glasgow that we chair. And we're going also to have in Milan another pre-COP26 event, and with the EU for Climate Driving Ambition, an event that will let young people interact with the ministers involved in negotiations. We're going to have this preparatory event of the COP26 in Glasgow. Thanks to the Innovation League on October 9 and 10 in Sorrento, the protagonists of involved innovation will discuss within a new format how to leverage the investments of startups and investors from several countries to respond to 5 planet challenges through a public-private co-investment experiment in advanced technologies. So again, when it comes to the economic and social sustainability of associations and considering the contribution that can be made by investors to international dynamics, we can certainly become more ambitious to orientate and to guide the international recovery. We certainly need to support developing countries when it comes to food security and sustainability of the debt. The pandemic was a stress test on agri-food supplies, and we ran the risk of a twofold crisis, a food crisis and a health crisis, because during the COVID year, the hunger increased and there were 161 million people more for a total of 811 million people in the world that are suffering from hunger. So we had an increase by 161 million people in just 1 year. And the Declaration of Matera confirmed the central role of the zero hunger goal that was set up by the UN agenda for 2030. We had a summit in Rome in July on the food systems, and we want to keep working on that. When it comes to the sustainability of the data of the poorest countries, Italy is promoting important activities within the G20, like an initiative to suspend the debt and in order to set free resources for social and health expenses, and also a common framework to accompany low-income countries in their restructuring process. And also, we had a session of the G20 in Matera, and in October we're going to have a conference entitled Meetings with Africa with a focus on climate change. For these reasons, multilateralism is the natural dimension of the international work done by Italy and that are beneficial to citizens at large. And the COVID test showed the advantages of a cooperative, coordinated approach, and that is why we are so much supportive of multilateralism. And certainly, we can also draw the following conclusions. In order to reform the multilateral system, in order to make it more efficient and suitable to modern times, we need to make it more inclusive, especially when it comes to any social bodies and entities. We need to consider better the needs of most deprived countries. We need to be oriented to the sustainable development, peace, security, ecological issues, and climate. And the EU cannot miss the opportunity of the conference on the future of Europe. That is an occasion to involve citizens on policies that have to do with their daily life. Within this conference, Italy decided to promote a conference that involves young people, including young people coming from the Balkans, that are countries that look at the EU with admiration. And so we're going to have within the World Forum of Metallics, we will organize this conference. Moreover, we have submitted some proposals to renew the decision-making process of the EU, references specifically to some veto powers, and also we want to be active when it comes to digital transition, the strategic independence of Europe. So we need to accelerate our ability to respond. So we need to discuss about that. And finally, the reform of the UN, starting from the reform of the Security Council of the UN that still represents, once again, the best place to discuss the mechanisms of functioning of the UN. So it is absolutely a priority to reform this, and we support the Secretary General Antonio Guterres when it comes to having more democratic, responsible, inclusive organization. And then we have the WTO challenge, because we would also need to reform that also to take care of political relationships. When it comes to the B20 and its president, Marcegaglia, who I thank for her work, well, commercial relations reinforce political relations and vice versa. It is self-evident, but when it comes to Italy, this is really vital. So multilateralism in the commercial context is vital for Italy also to increase its political importance in the world. When it comes to the G20 devoted to trade that will take place in Sorrento in the fall, we'll also consider this topic. Italy will keep playing its part, President Marcegaglia, and certainly thanks to the coordination and connection to the Atlantic values, it will dialogue with all the main players, including China and Russia, that are very important partners when it comes to many issues, including the climate issue. Well, I thank you again for the invitation, and I hope you contributed to the debate on such a complex topic that sees Italy really as a key protagonist when it comes to the G20, but also other meetings with African representatives, the Italy Latin American Conference, the Metallics at the end of the year. So all those are going to be great opportunities to reinforce the confidence in multilateralism, and Italy has always been working for that all over the years. I thank you very much, and I remain available for any additional question. Thank you, Minister, for these very complete update on the position of Italy with respect to Afghanistan, and also for the large vision and the perspective you illustrated at international level. Well, I think I can say that Italy has its own leadership when it comes to these renewal processes. Well, we are almost come to the end of the time at our disposal, so please be so kind to ask quickly. A question for Mrs. Marcegaglia. So economy is not neutral. I mean, economy has always supported a certain kind of culture. You made some examples in that respect. So to what extent Italy can bring some added value to a cultural change when it comes to the approach to sustainability and climate change in the B20?
As I was saying before, I think it is extremely important to invest, or rather for enterprises to invest. And well, the role of enterprises is fundamental. So we need to invest in technologies. We have to make sure that all enterprises have strategies to decrease emissions. Big enterprises should help smaller enterprises in the whole process. But we also need to stress that there already is an Italian leadership on this. When we talk about sustainability, we go beyond environmental sustainability. There is also the social sustainability. And so I will go back to what Minister Di Maio was saying on Afghanistan, the need to protect women. So I would really like to launch an appeal at a political level, but not only. I do believe that the West cannot stay silent while women are losing all their basic rights. They will not be able to study. They will not even be able to leave the house. They will just have there to be wives to jihadists and give birth to other jihadists. So this is a social sustainability, which is even more important. So if a woman with an international experience, just like you, says that, the appeal becomes even more effective. President Rocca, we have been talking about humanitarian corridors as a need. What do you think? How can we go back to the creation of humanitarian corridors for the most urgent situations? Well, human corridors at the moment, well, we are working together with the ministries for foreign affairs and the Ministry of Defense. We are trying to, to open up this channel to welcome the families of Afghan citizens who worked with our countries. Italy has really provided, it's really set an example, because from Libya, from Syria, we also have other humanitarian corridors. So this is also another encouraging aspect. But just one more thing. I think that at the moment, well, there will be some pressure from Afghanistan with reference to humanitarian corridors. But, and I'm saying this with the utmost respect for everyone's sufferance, I believe that the sufferance in Afghanistan is not worse than that of women in Nigeria under Boko Haram. So, well, we always start our reasoning at an emotional level. I'm receiving a lot of phone calls of people who have completely different positions, but they are now ready to host children from Afghanistan, even those who are against immigration. So this is what we need. All the countries need to manage migrations. So we need to manage this complexity. It's not the humanitarian operator that has to bear this responsibility. Thanks for your clear statement. Minister Di Maio, one last question for you. You talked about the role of Europe many times in your speech. The European conference that will start soon will lead to a more united Europe in terms of international dialogue well as an actor in terms of international cooperation, because we need, in both cases, we need resources, we need a clear and strong political position. So do we have this opportunity, or are we still uncertain? Well, what I can say is that this depends on how the European citizens will understand the importance of this commitment, because a great effort we are making as governments of member states of the EU is to actually promote the importance of this conference, because if the citizens will raise their expectations and will exert some pressure, this positive mechanism will be triggered that will have positive effects on the European foreign policies, because it is enough that one country vetoes a certain measures that a whole project, a whole package of measures can be blocked. So I do agree with the President Rocca when he says that states need to start acting politically to manage migration, but this also means to work on climate changes that has been causing desertification or combating terrorism from a horizontal point of view. So avoiding that people needed to leave their homes because of conflicts and the war. But anyway, if our citizens, if public opinion can understand the importance of this conference, we will really be able to achieve important goals. The EU, in a way, was not ready to react from the healthcare point of view to the situation. Yes, we have some coordination mechanisms. Somehow we don't even have that in Italy as a central government, because this is all dealt with at regional level. So if we can work in terms of healthcare in Europe, we will be able to overcome internal conflicts in different countries. And then again, the Conference on the Future of Europe is also an opportunity to find a common European industrial policy, because we are talking about sustainability and climate changes. But as President Marcegaglia was saying a few moments ago, Europe, not only the European Union, the 8% is responsible for just 8% of global emissions. So the idea is to understand what Europe can do to tell China, to tell India, and to tell the United States, you have to reduce your own emissions. In 2020, we have the goal of climate neutrality, but there will be countries that will be responsible for 35% of all global emissions. And here, industrial policy means to set sustainability targets, targets of digital translation. We talk about counterbalancing the giants of digitalization outside Europe. But then again, we have antitrust rules that really make it difficult for us to work together. So we cannot really compete with our great competitors at national level. So the minimum tax on the multinational was a great success of G20, because it was a change in the paradigm in terms of giants in the digital sector. For years, Italy tried to issue the digital tax to protect Italian industries from foreign competitors, but we were threatened by those countries who hosted these big digital companies, and finally, we managed to have a minimum tax of 16% on digital multinationals, and this was achieved within the G20. So this, in a way, can protect Italy, where in Italy we have 95% of small and medium enterprises, but also big enterprises and companies need to compete with fiscal systems that are that represent a form of unfair competition. So this is something that is always seen as something that is far away from us, but this is where decisions are taken to protect, or unfortunately somehow to create problems to small artisans and small entrepreneurs. Thank you, Mr. Minister. Since you made an appeal to the European public opinion, I can say that the Rimini meeting will always be in favor of a strong Europe. So thank you to President Marcegaglia, President Rocca, to Minister Di Maio. I do believe that this has been a very useful session because we really had a lot of food for thought, and we were also brought up to date with so many projects for the future. And every one of us, I think, has understood that we are part of big changes and we cannot stay aloof of all these changes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here.